Anyway, we got 20 minutes to make up from yesterday. Unfortunately. This game has no autosave feature, so we are doing it all again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Himatsubushi. For you, the final mystery. This is the time-killing chapter. I now entrust you with all the mysteries hidden within Higurashi when they cry. However comical it may be, if you have reached any conjecture, then you may have passed. This final novel is a meager reward for you. Conjecture is impossible. You have the right to reject this story. Alright, and this is going to be like, yeah, okay, so we can like... This adds in some of the choices that were added to later editions of the game that include bad endings, and I believe we went with prompt choices and highlight the correct answers, but we will probably pursue those bad ends wherever they appear anyway. So who's the criminal, you asked? Do we search for them in this story? Who's the criminal, you asked? Do you even know what the criminal did? Who is the criminal? Who is the criminal who will kill me now? So somebody's killing Frederica Bernkenstel, whoever the hell that is. And we're jumping to 1985, 2 years after tragedy. I had misread the time and ended up arriving too early. The schedule board flipped with a series of clacks. My flight to Sapporo was still a bit later on. I still had over an hour before boarding. Well, I might as well close my eyes for a bit on that bench over there then. I came directly from work, so maybe the fatigue from that was making me sleepy. Finding a suitable bench, I put my luggage on a seat next to me and settled down. I sighed like an old man. I had hoped to stay young forever, but had become splendidly middle-aged. That's kind of how I'm going to refer to it, since I'm hitting 40 this year, is splendidly middle-aged. Apparently the rumor that even people in the latter half of their 20s experience a decline in their physical strength wasn't a lie. It had been mind-numbingly busy at work lately, so I rarely had any time to myself. This might have been the first time I'd been able to enjoy a journey alone like this since I was a student. The reason behind this trip was to meet with an old friend. It's a bit of strange to call him an old friend. In fact, it might have been better to call him a bad one. After retiring a couple years ago, he moved to Sapporo, his mother's hometown. His mother passed away soon after, and he was now peacefully enjoying his second lease on life. His name was Kurado Oishi. He was a former detective from the primary investigation unit at the station in Okinomiya Prefecture. To be honest, the only direct contact we ever had didn't last more than 3 days. After that, we exchanged New Year's cards but never met again, so this would be the first time meeting him in 7 years. In other words, we met 7 years ago, in 1978. There was something I just had to ask to talk to him about concerning that time. To explain that, it was impossible not to recall the incident that happened back then. That kidnapping, the details and resolution of which were resigned to darkness. Also, it was impossible not to recall a certain mysterious girl. My name is Mamoru Akasaka. It was a year that had been strangely hot even though it was only June.
はい、さようなら。車に気をつけるんですよ。お友達の家に寄り道なんかしないように。明日の教科書の準備は必ず寝る前にしておくんですよ。
The lively sounds of children running toward the hallway.
でさ、つってんだぜ。
そんなの俺持ってるもんよ。いらねえよ。
The unique high-pitched voice of youth, the energetic shrill of the cicadas went completely unheard by their ears. Children returning home from school split off one by one from their groups of friends as they went through the intersections in the residential area. Even though there were several of them in group as they left the school, as they got closer to their homes, their numbers dwindled. That's why fewer friends you were walking home with acted as an indicator that you were that much closer to your destination.
あばよ。
また明日ね。
He finally parted ways with his last friend. A van was parked at the bend in the road. The window was open, the sound of the radio leaping outside. It must have been the news or
たた
something.
め、道路交通法違反、公務執行妨害で3名を逮捕しました。一連のひなみ沢ダム建設反対をめぐる運動は、先月の機動隊との流血事件を境に、
Did you miss anything important? Probably not. Nah. It's just a couple games. You only missed a couple of games, no big deal.
警察では過激な活動家による次の事件を警戒しています。先週も建設省庁舎前での犬飼建設大臣への直訴事件があったばかりで。
The boy's ears perked up at the mention of the name Inugai. At that moment, a man's face peeked out suddenly from the window of the van. His behavior was a little different than that of a man looking around to see if there was any oncoming traffic before he opened the door of his vehicle. His eyes meeting suddenly with the unfamiliar man, the boy panicked slightly.
ウグイス OK。
ひばり OK。前後2ブロック確保した。
One of these days, I'm gonna have a cool name like Skylark.
いいぞ。
The man in the passenger seat whispered quietly, nodding in acknowledgement. The man opened the door and stood before the boy.
君、犬飼俊樹君？
While asking that, the man peered at the boy's name tag. Toshiki Inugai. The name was written plainly there. The phone rang for a third time. That was a lot more than 3 times. If he reached out, he could easily pick up the receiver. However, he was concerned that if he picked it up before it had even finished ringing once, whoever was on the other end of the line would think him a fairly cheap person. That's why he normally never picked up the phone until the 3rd ring. Even he thought it was a worthless habit. Who else does this? Because I kind of do this too. I'm not one on picking up the phone. Like, I guess I don't. I guess phones don't really much ring anymore as they do, like, I'm going to let that thing ring like maybe 10 seconds before I pick it up. Don't want to seem too eager. However, his thinking of there isn't much meaning in waiting for just 3 rings, wouldn't waiting for 5 be alright, was very much a reality. His mind filled with such trifling thoughts, he picked up the phone after the 3rd ring had finished and a reverb dampened by his actions.
もしもし。もしもし。
Phone is on silent, never answer it. That is also a good way to handle telephone calls. You're too fidgety not to answer it right away. So you're overeager for answering the telephone. You're a cheap person, according to this man. At those times, it was best to hang up and let the person on the other end call again. Thinking that the moment he began to hang up the phone, he sensed that there was definitely connected after all. He felt the presence of the person on the other end of the line, keeping silent.
もしもし。
There was no way they didn't hear his question. What was the meaning of this? It wasn't like he didn't know that people could use silent calls to harass others. However, he'd never received a call like that until today. Maybe he was just lucky before, but he didn't believe that he would receive such a call on this phone. There was no direct calls to or from this line. Everything had to go through an operator. Therefore, there was absolutely no way the call would be connected unless it was verified there was somebody else on the other end of the line. You don't answer the phone if they need you. They'll call again. That's yeah. We have no storms today, but at the moment, I see no storms. It is very vibrant and bright outside today. Currently. But we started the stream and I literally had like 800 million dropped frames before it started to level out. So we're hoping things go well this time. Welcome, Cassius. Glad to have you aboard. You have to answer for work. Your supervisor doesn't understand Microsoft Excel. Oh no. That's the worst kind of calls to have to answer. Calls where people need me to do things. So I didn't understand how to deal with this silent call and instead settled into confusion.
誰だか知らないが、用がないなら切るよ。またかけ直してください。
Praying to the bandwidth god. Yeah, I'm doing the same. Ever since I reset my modem, popped up a new connection. We dropped 505 frames at the start of stream, but we've been live now for about 20 minutes, and it's been holding pretty steady. So I'm hoping for the best here. Intending that to be the parting line, he made to slam the receiver. It was at that moment the person on the other end spoke for the first time.
あんたが犬飼大臣じゃないならさっさと電話を切ってください。
That's not fun. Tropical depressions and storms. I couldn't help but be surprised by the extremely strange voice on the other end of the line. Was there a human alive who could speak with this hoarse and metallic of a voice? No, that was a voice he had heard somewhere before. That was the kind of voice that was on those lowbrow documentaries that they'd use when they wanted to hide the identity of a speaker, wasn't it? The voice he was hearing over the line was exactly that.
誰？
だからそれはこっちが聞いてるんですよ。あんた犬飼大臣じゃないの？
He, Inugai, hesitated to answer. Unable to discern the intent of the suspicious phone call, he had a vague feeling that something was off. He thought about hanging up the phone and asking the operator who initiated the call. However, he forced himself to restrain the urge, and for the time being, chose to state his name and listen.
そうです。犬飼です。名乗りましたよ。だから、あんたも名乗ってくださいよ。
私の名前なんてどうでもいい。
Well, it's very clear that their name is Kidnapper. That would be very good information if our friend Inugai could just peek at our screen right now,
ま
though.
ずあなたがどういう立場に置かれているか、それをあなたは今自分の席で電話をしていますね。ではあなたの席の右側の一番下の引き出しを開けてみてください。
The lowest drawer on the right of the minister's chair. There was a lock on it, not enough to function as a safe, but nevertheless it was a drawer that contained some valuable things. That's why Inugai thought that the person wanted some of the important information contained within the drawer.
すまんが、開けるつもりはないよ。
It's probably fine.
自分の名前も名乗れんやつの言いなりになる言われはない。
引き出しを開けてくれないならこの電話を切ります。きっと後悔することになりますよ。まずは引き出しを開けてから考えてもいいんじゃないですか。
Gonna make you regret hanging up on me, Buster. Nobody hangs up on me. Inugai didn't like following orders from the suspicious person one bit. However, he was concerned about what the man said about regretting it, so he decided to open the drawer. He took a small key he kept stowed in his wallet and unlocked the drawer. His hand stopped right before he opened it. What if there was a bomb inside, and it would explode if the drawer was open? That delusion took hold of him. He quelled that instinct and opened it.
開けてくれましたか？そこにあるものが何かわかりますよ。
There's Higurashi inside the drawer.
これは
Wait, we made that same joke
どう
yesterday.
いうことだ？おい、
どういうことか説明する必要なんかないですよね。時間を差し上げますので少しお考えください。また後ほどこちらから連絡いたします。それでは失礼。
おい、待て。もしもし、もしもし。
The call had already ended. That would not change no matter how much he yelled at it. Even still, Inugai, without realizing that, continued yelling into the receiver for a while. The drawer was still open. On top of the folders, crammed into the drawer, it lay there. Toshiki Inugai. Written in plain lettering on a grade schooler's name tag. Just laying there. Enshrined there, completely out of place, as if it were cowering. Higurashi isn't real. It can't hurt you. Do you remember, Yukie? This picture. This is where I first proposed to you. A brief moment before you nodded back. You probably wouldn't know just how much it seemed like an eternity to me. Yes. I would never have thought that the amount of time could feel like an eternity, compared to how long I had to wait for you to propose to me it was. From the moment I met you until today, compared to the time I've spent since I was born, it might only be a brief period, but they were definitely precious, beautiful days that deserve to be called an eternity. The time continues even now. From now on, I wonder if it'll be a boy, or maybe a girl. Either one is fine. Boy or girl. Either way, it's living proof that we love each other. If it's a boy, we'll name it after you, Mamoru. If it's a girl, we'll put the Yuki from my name in hers. Thinking about names is so fun in the end, we still haven't decided yet. There's still time to puzzle over it. Not that long of a time, actually. You see, Yukie, there's something I have to apologize for today. It's about your job. Sorry. It looks like an annoying bit of work has come up. In the worst case, I might not be there for the delivery. It's fine. You have a very important job. What you do protects the way we live. Compared to you, it's nothing. Please, go ahead. When you return, I'll be waiting here with our child. Thank you. Also, I'm sorry. Please don't apologize. If you feel guilty about it, then you can just atone. If I atone that much, no matter how much money I have, it won't be enough. It's a joke. Now go on. As I left the room, I bumped into an elderly man. It was Yukie's father. In other words, my father-in-law.
お父さん、邪魔する気はなかったからな。
That can happen sometimes, depending on if you're like alt-tabbing back and forth between tabs. Sometimes it'll like do a quick rewind or something. Like Twitch is real weird. Like if you tab away from it, it gets really temperamental these days. Like it'll like bump the quality down to 360 or something, and then, like when you come back and you look at the screen, it's like, why does it look like poop in a toilet now? And Twitch is like, you tabbed away from me and you shouldn't have done that, lover. I didn't want to intrude.
廊下で待たせてもらったよ。聞き耳を立てるつもりはなかったが、聞こえてしまった。生きたまえ、幸恵はああいう娘だ。何があっても自分が君の枷になることを望む。
私はこれまで幸恵に様々な犠牲を強いてきました。出産という人生の節目にまで彼女に犠牲を強いることを恥じます。
君が本当にそう思うなら、仕事が終わったら幸恵のために時間を割きなさい。君が仕事を投げ出して付き添ってくれるよりも、そうした方がきっと幸恵も喜ぶだろう。
ありがとうございます。
君がとても大切な仕事をしていることは私もよく知っている。自分の仕事を誇りに思いなさい。幸恵は君が見事難題を解決して凱旋するのを楽しみにしている。
はい。
I jumped into the taxi that was waiting outside. Compared to the time when I first got here, the numbers on the fare meter had grown considerably. It seemed the modest time Yukie and I had spent together wasn't so modest of an objective point of view. From an objective point of view. Yeah, Yandere Twitch is pretty much right.
いえいえ。では参りますよ。
The taxi jerked as it changed gears to accelerate, soon burying the hospital my wife was in behind a throng of buildings. If it was to end up as a really troublesome ordeal, I probably wouldn't be returning for quite some time. To call a rookie like me, on top of that, one who's off duty, it didn't seem that the section chief was calling for all hands on deck. It seemed that the section chief was calling for all hands on deck. The veteran upper brass gathering on an emergency basis happened occasionally. This was the first time, though, that I experienced everybody gathering together like this. Whatever was happening, there was no doubt it was going to be something novel. Right when my wife was ready to give birth, if I wanted to spend the time to curse my misfortunes, I'd be here all day. Even the verdant ginkgo trees lining the street that always brightened my mood seemed to lack some of their usual luster. Eventually, the government office came into view. Briefly holding my breath, I let the feelings of tension course through my body once again. I had to remember the work I was doing was important, necessary, and difficult. I composed myself and sharpened my wit. Ready? The taxi stopped in front of the building.
Shichou, 全員揃いました。赤坂君、ブラインドを下ろしてくれる？
We're getting rid of that cool blind effect again. The blinds were usually closed when they needed to use a projector or if the discussion was going to contain some particularly disturbing content. The blinds closed with a satisfying sound, darkening the interior of the room. Immediately, the inside of the room was completely drained of the pleasant morning atmosphere, leaving behind only the cold illumination of the fluorescent lighting. After the supervisor ensured that everyone was present, he nodded to the section chief once again. With everybody on the edge of their seats, the chief stood up solemnly and began to give his report.
推定48時間前、建設大臣の孫にあたる建設省幹部の子息が誘拐された模様です。建設大臣は事態を穏便に済ませるため、警察へ通報せず要求に応じるものと思われます。
It seemed that approximately 48 hours earlier, the Minister of Construction's grandson and those of his senior staff members were kidnapped. The reason why it was phrased that way was because the person in question didn't admit that it
大
happened.
臣宅の通話を監視した結果、都外からと思われる不審な電話が数件
We
確
are here
認
to
されました。
investigate a maybe kidnapping.
誘拐された子供は病気療養中となっているが、通院の形跡はなく、周辺での目撃例もなく、その他いくつかの理由から事件発生は間違いないものと断定しました。
Here they omitted the details that brought this incident to light. If you think about it a bit, that meant that before this incident happened, the minister's residence had been under some surveillance already. I won't use the term spied upon. Of course, there wouldn't have been court approval for this, and it would have been very hard to obtain to ordinary citizens. However, it was quite an effective method to catch wind of incidents like this before they got worse. I'd like for you to understand that dealing with these cases before they become a problem is the job of the Public Safety Division.
なぜ警察に通報せず要求を鵜呑みに？
大臣たる者が警察を信用できないってんだから。
犯人グループは誘拐初期に自分たちが大臣の生活をかなり高度に監視していることを警告し、その証拠を示した様子です。大臣が屈服し、警察への通報も思いとどまるほどの何かですね。
警察へ通報してもすぐにわかるぞって？
大臣の近辺に内通者がいる可能性か。
Several of the higher-ranking members who seem to have experienced this kind of thing let out a deep
犯人
sigh.
グループの目的が要求にあるのか、事件そのものにあるのかは不明ですが、いずれにせよ、国益を脅かす事態に発展する可能性が極めて高い。
If their goal was to simply have their demands met for monetary gain, that wouldn't have been nice. However, if this was some politically motivated shakeup, things would get a little more
被害者の
complicated.
協力がないということは、脅迫内容も要求も一切不明ということか。
本件は内通者の水準がかなり高いと思われるため、当室のみの極秘捜査とします。また本件は本日より最優先事項となり、これまでの通常業務を一時凍結して対応します。
Duties.
よろしいですね。
After that, the supervisor continued on, tactfully explaining our course of action. If this incident were to become public, it was possible that the minister's political life would be over. I'll spare you the explanation of how the rest of the dominoes would fall, but in the end, the support of the Diet would decline, followed by a no-confidence vote and a snap election, and it might even expand communist influences. In other words, we wanted to handle this
川崎
delicately.
と佐伯は大臣宅子供宅の通話を24時間監視。大臣の動向を探れ。動きがあるたびに逐一報告せよ。残る各職員は担当団体ごとに本件との関連を調査。最近動きが不穏な特殊ラインは集中的にやれ。それから外国勢力も水を漏らすな。
I've experienced one or two unamicable situations before. This, however, was the first time I've seen things get so hectic. Several sophisticated conversations were progressing without the involvement of a rookie like me. I didn't intend to be timid, but I couldn't hide my confusion at this unfamiliar
だが
situation.
滝内に言ってくれ。で、赤坂君は
I snapped back alertness upon hearing my name called.
はい。
赤坂君は大臣に陳情してきた環境保護団体関連を調査してくれ。中でも新聞でも騒ぎになってる Hinamizawa ダム建設反対の
This
団
is
体
about
を
where we left off
よく
yesterday,
調査
so
する
now
こと
we are in actual new territory for when we got disconnected and everything died yesterday.
住民団体
Welcome
の
back
仕
to
業
the
と
video
は
game,
到
everybody.
底思えないが、全ての可能性を潰していかなくてはならない。
わかりました。Hinamizawa ダム反対か。
直接現地へ行った方がいいだろう。現地県警で情報を取れ。かなり過激な団体らしく、向こうの公安でもマークしてるらしいぞ。
わかりました。現地へ出港します。
奥さん、出産控えてるんだって。こんなタイミングで申し訳ないけど、協力頼むよ。時間がかけられないから、人海戦術で総当たりで行くしかないんだ。
ええ、わかってます。家内も自分の都合が私の仕事に触ることを嫌いますから。
すまん、ありがとう。それから川崎くん、佐伯くん、君たちの応援には。
I didn't want to take a business trip when my wife was about to give birth. Even if I was a little busy, as long as I was in Tokyo, I could head to the hospital right away. On assignment, though, that would be difficult. Even so, I knew the work I was doing was important, and I fully understood that I was in no position to be selfish. I'd have to make it up to my wife for having to be away at such an important time. My wife, Yukie, would probably forgive me with a smile. The only thing she could hate doing would be holding me back. My male ego, though, at least wished she would have tried to stop me. Sorry, Yukie. I don't mind if you always complain to our child about her father couldn't come to the hospital when they were born because he was too busy with work. The next day, I took the bullet train to Nagoya, and from there transferred to train to XX Prefecture. Getting to my destination by land took several hours. If I was traveling by air, the amount of time would probably get as far as Hong Kong. XX Prefecture was by no means close. I never sat first class except for work, but whenever I did, the seats seemed stiff. Closing my eyes, I mentally reviewed the documents I read yesterday. A group under investigation, the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. They were a group of residents opposed to development of proposed under the Hinamizawa Dam project. The local protests were quite heated and were getting more radicalized. Even limited to what was written in the newspapers, there was bloodshed that occurred during a clash with riot police, interference with the dam construction, too many to count. The number of petitions, sit-ins, and direct appeals to the relevant organizations were innumerable. As an extension of that, there was a direct appeal to the Minister of Construction the
こ
other
れが
day.
そもそも今回この団体を調査することになったゆえんだ。
The land that they lived on was going to be submerged, so it was no wonder that they would go into a frenzy over it. Even given that, though, could they really be capable of doing something like kidnapping the Minister of Construction's grandson in order to halt the project? From my take on it, I had serious doubts. This kidnapping plot was extremely sophisticated and complicated enough that it was believed that there was some political backing. This wasn't something that could be pulled off by some group of local protesters. Well, just like the chief said, the plan was to eliminate all possibilities. While I'm in the XX's police's reference room taking my time investigating, the higher-ups in Tokyo would probably solve the case, without my involvement entirely. Even if that was true, I couldn't regret being away from Tokyo while my wife was ready to give birth. This was work. There was really nothing that I could do. Ding dong, bing bong! The announcement that we would be arriving at our destination soon snapped me back to wakefulness.
鬼ヶ淵死守同盟ですか。
ええ、地元ではかなり賑わせているようです。
The Prefectural Public Safety Department already had the documents and a cup of tea ready and waiting.
早い話がダム反対の住民運動なんですが、事実上水没地域の住民すべてが決起したと言っていいでしょうね。死守なんて古風な言い方が示す通り、相当の決意と覚悟を持った連中です。そこら辺の温和な住民団体とは一線を画すと思っていただいた方がいいですね。
The stack of papers they had prepared for me in the document room was by no means thin.
発足当初はごくごく平均的な住民運動だったんです。それがいつだかの流血事件を境に急にヒートアップしまして、今では暴力主義団体かそれに準じるくらいの過激な勢力に成長したと言えますね。
Violent organizations usually indicate ones that enforce their own ideology without regard to the democratic process. Breaking that down, many of those organizations held extreme left revolutionary ideologies. Considering that, I couldn't help but be surprised that the citizens group would end up going this far. Radical citizens movements happen occasionally. It seemed, however, that this group was nothing as trifling as that. It seemed that I would have to reconsider exactly what this Onigafuchi Defense Alliance was.
鬼ヶ淵主導名が要求、つまりダム計画の撤回を求めるために行いうる活動範囲はどの程度でしょうか。
The kidnapping of the minister's grandson was classified. That meant, of course, I couldn't tell the XX Prefectural Department about it either.
ご存知の通り、先週あった犬飼建設大臣への直訴事件では逮捕者も出ています。危険性は十分にありますね。
I skimmed over the list of criminal records related to the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance recorded in the documents. The contents were all violent, not giving me the barest hint. The contents were all violent, not giving me the barest hint of a feeling that these people were trying to uphold the law.
具体的に教えていただけますか。
The chief opened up a manila envelope, fished out several unorganized sheets, and spread them out on the desk.
建設現場への襲撃事件が最も多かったですね。初期の頃、電源コードの切断や錠前の鍵穴に石を詰める、投石による事務所の窓ガラス割り等の軽犯罪が頻発していました。
Of course, what really happened first were things like demonstrations, sit-ins, and distributions of pamphlets, lively but democratic forms of protests. However, then the demonstrators and the police clashed, which started a riot, leading to numerous injuries and arrests. It was from then on that the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance, like their name implies, began to take a more demonic form of resistance.
襲撃が度重なれば地元警察による警備強化がなされるのでは。
それは警戒はしたでしょうね。でもあちらは地元ですから。闇に乗じて忍び込まれたらお手上げでしょう。
You might as well label the entire map of Hinamizawa village around the dam construction site enemy territory. No matter how alert the police were, the locals would just show them exactly how easy it was to sneak
警
around.
察が警備を固めてからはむしろ挑発されたように過激化が進みました。ほら、この辺りからだいぶヒートアップしてるのがお分かりになります？
事務所の放火、建設重機の破壊工作。破壊？まさか爆弾でも？
いや、まさか。連中ですね。タンクに角砂糖を放り込むんですよ。
That'll fuck up an engine or two real fast.
あれやられたらエンジン焦げついちゃいますから。
Even in Japan, it seemed there had been people doing that to vehicles and occupying forces right after the war. Compared to misdemeanors like breaking windows, it was extremely violent and aggressive.
そこまでやられたら地元警察の面目は丸つぶれですね。
放火はさすがにですね。それで地元警察が24時間体制の人員を大幅に増員しまして、それで建設現場への襲撃は一段落したようです。
He used the words quieted down, but that was still smack dab in the middle of the list of crimes.
で、連中ですね。現場への直接攻撃が難しくなったとしたら、今度は個人攻撃に切り替えました。最初に狙われたのが工事事務所の現場作業者でした。
After that, there was silence. What was being described to me was a guerrilla war fought in the jungle. Threats and violence against the workers. Harsh words and harsher rocks were thrown.
かなりの告訴がされているのに逮捕者があまり出ていませんね。
そりゃそうです。第一、目撃者なんかいないんですから。それどころか 現行犯だったにしたってアリバイがポンポンポンとできちゃうんです。
それはどういうことですか？
例えばですね、ある男にナイフで刺されたとします。あなたは相手をよく覚えていて、名前も住所も特定できてるとします。ただしナイフには指紋がなく、物的証拠だけがない。まあありがちな傷害事件だと思うでしょ。でもHinamizawaじゃ完全犯罪なんです。
Our boy Keiichi knows a thing or two about perfect crimes. Everybody is the entire village. They're all in on it. To protect the man who was the perpetrator, they'll get their story straight and prepare an alibi. To that end, they'll probably even forge some evidence.
裁判にもつれ込ますほかないわけですが、何しろ物的証拠はない上、犯人を隠匿する証言だけは後から増えていく。検察も書類送検には二の足を踏むわけです。殺人ならいざ知らず、投石で額を切った、殴られてあざができた程度だと、仮に犯人を特定できたとしても嫌疑不十分で送検されないことがほとんどです。
Every case is without doubt having a stroke again on stream. Good go me. I have like 12 of those a week, it seems. Every case is without a doubt perpetrated by someone in Hinamizawa, but they can't identify who. Even if they could figure out who it is, they're unable to obtain enough circumstantial evidence through due process. The villagers were all extremely well informed about this, and so the malicious, vicious, and tenacious personal attacks continued.
被害者はそれでは納得できないでしょう。検察審査会に再審請求を出さないのですか？
それはですね、審査員たちがみんな厄介ごとに巻き込まれたくないと思っているからですよ。Hinamizawa関係のトラブルには首を突っ込みたがらないんです。
The inquest committee is comprised of random selection of local residents. In the event that the prosecutor fails to get a conviction, they have the power to order a retrial. It's a system designed to assert the will of the people on the actions of expert prosecutors in the legal world. In this case, however, being composed of local residents has
首
backfired.
を突っ込みたがらない。それはなぜです？
なんて説明すればいいんでしょう。恐れられているって言えばいいのかな。あそこはね、少し特殊なんです。
Things are just a little special in Hinamizawa. Just a hair different, maybe, than everywhere else.
特殊？何か政治的なバックボーンが存在するということですか？
いえ、そういうのとは少し違うというか、まあ怖がられていると思ってください。この辺りは口では少し説明しにくいんです。ああ、そうだ、わかりやすいのがありました。
Wiping his forehead with an anger chief, he opened a file labeled as a list of members of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance.
鬼ヶ淵死守同盟の勢力にはですね、近隣の町々に強い影響力を持つ人間が多々おりまして、この辺をご覧いただけますか。
I looked. What I saw startled me. Prefectural and municipal assembly members, staff members of the Chamber of Commerce, and an executive of a business association, an executive of a town council association, and a PTA liaison. There were more than a few people with a lot of say, both locally and in the neighboring
この界隈では、Hinamizawaのダム反対運動は皆静観しているのが普通なんです。ダムを肯定するような発言をすると、どこでどう巡って不利益を被るかわからない。何しろ近隣の町の喉元はHinamizawa出身の人間が抑えていますからね。
検察審査員のリストは非公開でしょう。報復がされないように何らかの措置が取られているはずでは。
一応非公開でプライバシーは守られてますがね。それを管理してるのは沖宮市役所の人間、つまり地元の人間なんです。守秘義務があるとはいえ、やはり人間のつながりは分かりませんからね。Hinamizawaの人間はそのあたりのつながりがことのほか強固ですから。
When you consider the obligations and duties people have to the region, the web of information thereby formed is nothing to scoff at. It's not uncommon that housewives in a neighborhood to know which kid from which house and which is what grade in which school, what subjects they're good at, and what vegetables they hate, among other things.
それにほら、Hinamizawaと遅延の深い暴力団組織がありましてね。これが今回の騒動に全面バックアップしてるらしいんです。こちらが出てくるのが一番効いてるみたいですね。
暴力団？ダムの建設反対で住民と一致？どういう利害が一致するのか読み難いですね。
それは難しいことじゃないです。実はですね、この暴力団の組長がですね、Hinamizawa村の出身なんです。村の重鎮の一人の婿養子にあたりまして。
He was adopted into the family. Interesting. Exactly what was this Hinamizawa? I had thought it was some desolate rustic village. However, for some reason, they exerted a strong influence in the surrounding areas and had a strong sense of unity. They would protect their village by any means necessary, even if that meant resorting to violence. The chief had said that they were afraid because of their numerous influential people living there, but somehow I got the feeling that they were afraid of the village itself. There was something clearly different from what I had read in the documents in Tokyo. There was no simple residential protest against the dam. For some reason, an uneasy feeling began to nestle itself in the back of my mind. I chose the most basic way to ask my question. In other words, I directly asked what I wanted to know.
室長、これは例えば仮の話ですが。
はい。
例えば、その鬼ヶ淵主導名がダム計画を頓挫させるため、例えば要人を脅迫するようなことは考えられますか？
Gonna be as subtle as a sledgehammer about this. The chief replied immediately.
あり得るでしょう。事実、彼らは市役所や県庁、建設省の工事事務所にも押しかけ、恫喝まがいのことをしていますし、工事関係者の家族が不審者につけ回されたという事件も起こっています。
Well, that would make sense. To halt progress in the dam, they raided the construction site, destroying heavy machinery and lighting the construction office on fire. If they didn't have any qualms about doing that, threats and violence against people related to the dam would probably be no problem. But that was it. Even your everyday hoodlum can use threats and violence. However, this time it was the kidnapping of the minister's grandson, an abnormally high-level crime. Not only was pulling off kidnapping difficult in the first place, but so was maneuvering to have the minister surrender to their demands immediately. There was no way this was a work of amateurs. Did these people have the power to enact this large of a crime? That was the heart of the matter. Was the Onagafuchi Defense Alliance an organization capable of pulling this off? In order to ask that question once again, I chose the most basic method.
例えば、政府要人の関係者を誘拐して脅迫なんてことがあり得ると思いますか？
There's no way they could pull off something that big. That was the answer I most hoped for. If it was that answer, my work was as good as halfway done. I might be able to get back in time for my wife to give birth. That was how it was supposed to be. The chief, without a hint of hesitation, replied,
やるかもしれません。
Rip. So much for getting off easy.
そこの知れない連中ですから。
Sorry, Yukie. It seemed like my work wouldn't end up so simply after all.
おう、赤坂君か。ご苦労さん。担当地域での情報収集はどうですか？
順調です。これから現地警察の公安と接触できることになりましたので、現地へ向かう予定です。東京の調査の方はどうですか？
他の職員も順調に調査を進めているよ。でも調べる団体が星の数だからね。そんなに悠長に時間もかけられないし。
There were no new developments at this time. No matter how suspicious the Onagafuchi Defense Alliance was, if they solved the case in Tokyo, my job was done. It looked like my wishful thinking wouldn't come to pass. Hanging up the phone, I let my gaze drift outside the window to the valley of unfamiliar
Akasaka-san.
buildings.
今お貸しできる車が戻ってきました。ご案内しますのでこちらへどうぞ。
あ、すみません。
Does it have air conditioning? He showed me the elevator to the underground parking lot where a battered sedan was waiting for me. With the steering wheel kept drifting to the left and was a little concerning, but it would be enough to get me around for a while. My destination was Shishibone City, XX Prefecture, an area under the control of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. The Okinomiya police station was right on the front lines. Oh, I know where we going! I'll be back in just 1 second. Alright, we're back. Sorry about that. I had to take care of something real quick. Alright. Shishibone City was, as far as provincial cities went, rather behind the times. Okinomiya, recessed in the mountains, was even more remote. With little change between the seasons, all that was left was the tepid passage of time. It made for a rather drab town. There were no tourist attractions or local delicacies. Without a strong regional industry, it was simply dull. Just looking at the monotonous and peaceful townscape, it was hard to catch a glimpse of the radical resistance of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. The atmosphere of boredom didn't hint of the Okinomiya police station being on the front lines of the dam conflict, nor the numerous incidents that I've heard about at the prefectural headquarters.
おはようございます。違反金の納付ですか？
いえ、公安部の本田屋さんにアポイントがあります。赤坂とお伝えください。
失礼しました。少々お待ちください。
The clerk, who thought I was here to pay a parking violation at first glance, after fumbling with the unfamiliar extension number, told the person on the line they had a visitor.
Domo domo.
That's not the domo I'm here for. You teasing me, video game? That's not what I want to hear. You know what I'm here for.
赤坂さんでいらっしゃいますか？縁のはるばるお疲れ様でした。こんな部屋で申し訳ありませんね。応接室を押さえてあったんですがね。議員さんが突然お越しになっちゃったんで追い出されちゃいまして。
I would hesitate to call where we were a conference room, as it was very small and cluttered. The cramped space was packed with lockers. I had the impression that it was more of a change room than doubled as one for smoking. Yeah, that was like a 4 out of 10 at best. Listening to his crude chortles, I didn't get much of a feeling that Hondaya, who was head of the local police safety division, was much of an intellectual. But I knew that in exchange, he both had experience and absolute confidence in his
ご多忙
instincts.
中、突然お邪魔して申し訳ありませんでした。警視庁から参りました。赤坂と申します。よろしくお願いします。
公安部の本田屋です。よろしくよろしく。県警防隊の3階部長から協力を惜しむなと脅されておりますので。
防隊？県警の暴力団対策本部ですか？
うちじゃ鬼ヶ淵支所の連中は 暴力団の延長に位置づけてますんでね。あれを善意の住民運動だなんてあんた、東城もいいとこですわ。
He does have a pretty good wahaha game. I don't think it's as good as Keiichi's, but it's pretty solid. They said at the prefectural office, too, that the Onagafuchi Defense Alliance was linked to the local mob. If I recall correctly, the adopted son of somebody influential was a lieutenant in that game.
そりゃ逆。全然逆ですよ。暴力団の活動があって、それに住民団体が大義名分みたいにくっついていると、そういう風に考えてください。逆逆。
Hondiya was just about rolling with laughter. This was slightly different than the info given to me at the prefectural office, but somebody embedded locally would be more knowledgeable. While we were talking, occasionally some people who seemed to be detectives would come in and change. One of those individuals, noticing Hondiya's guffaws, came up to us. Hey! Check it out, a familiar face. This is like the Oishi theme now. This is the Mr. Sexy Cop theme. There's just some sax, baby. There you go. There you go. Drink it in. Drink it in. Go right ahead. It's a Casio sax for sure. You can tell.
おお、クラちゃん。ちょうどよかった。クラちゃんも入ってよ。
Sax with Oishi.
こちら、はるばる東京の警視庁からお見えになった赤坂警部。
警部だなんて。まだまだ新米です。赤坂です。よろしくお願いします。
初々しいのがいいですね。採用は今年ですか？
I couldn't help but think I was being ridiculed, so I only responded with a forced smile. I could tell that this new person was like Hondiya, the type who had confidence in their instincts and experience. I really didn't like those types of people.
赤坂さんにもご紹介します。こちらは刑事部の大石君。
Premarital sax.
赤坂さんがお問い合わせの S 号の件なら彼が詳しいです。
S 号？
園崎の S.
So now I think we know what the S is for when we're talking about Group S. If you didn't know who Group S was, when we were talking about them from the police investigations, the S is for Sonozaki.
S 号ってのはですね、園崎家が関連している件を示す。まあ。
As you can tell, it's a very clever code name. Nobody would ever figure this out, so I can see how you were probably lost the entire time. Sonozaki. Come to think of it, I remembered when I was poring over the documents at headquarters, there were quite a few people with the last name Sonozaki popping up.
確か、園崎氏は鬼ヶ淵死守同盟の役員でしたね。確か、会計だったと思います。
The two men were surprised that I rattled off what post that Sonozaki held. After a moment, both of them erupted with laughter.
赤坂さんでしたっけ？
Not at all, no.
あなた、お勉強家さんですね。ひょっとして、同盟の連中の主要人物、全部暗記してるんじゃ？
暗記というほどではありませんが、一応鬼ヶ淵死守同盟の幹部リストは一読しました。
じゃあ会長と副会長は？
会長は現hinamizawa村村長の君吉喜一郎氏、副会長は町会神社部長の古出氏、会計が園崎を領して、会計監査は牧野氏、教頭部長が君吉義郎氏、広報部長が園崎貞夫氏。
赤坂さん、あなたなかなかやりますね。給料安いけどうちに来ません？うちに一番必要で一番いないタイプですよ。
Who wouldn't take that job? If you got to hang around at a job with Oishi all day, are you telling me you'd turn that down? You would drop the job you're at in an instant to go do that. I know you would. Everybody here would.
で、ちなみに園崎貞夫は青年部長なんです。惜しいですね。広報部長は園崎忠孝。
Feeling like I wasn't being complimented at all, I started settling into an uncomfortable mood. However, I was becoming more and more aware that I was the weakest link in this investigation, so I just had to bear with it. I didn't mean for that feeling to show on my face, but the crafty detectives didn't let that slip by.
バカにしたつもりはないんです。お詫びと言っちゃなんですが、なんでしたら村を実際にご案内しましょう。
For somebody with no feel for the area like me, it would be a great help. I couldn't have asked for more.
鬼ヶ淵死守同盟ってのは結局Hinamizawa村の対外的な別称に過ぎません。村を知ることがあなたのお仕事の近道だと思いますよ。いかがです？
The residential movement, in other words, held influence over the whole region. So the leader of the movement was the leader of the influence. Just like that, and through processes in the region would becoming the several personalities of the movement. Just like Oishi had said, in order to learn what they were really like, this regional force behind the damn protests, getting to know the village was the quickest way. Nodding back without skipping a beat, Oishi laughed with satisfaction and stood up. I took the information I learned at the prefectural office and from Hyundai to heart. If my position was exposed, my personal safety was at risk. The opponent was an extremist group that had no qualms about using threats or violence against somebody. If my personal info was leaked, it wouldn't be hard to imagine that I'd be in danger, whether on the job or not. Thinking that, I felt a little nervous.
連中は顔を覚えるの早いですからね。私と一緒にいるところを見られると多分月並みですがね。こいつを身につけておいてください。
Oishi handed me an incredibly suspicious disguise comprised of a baseball cap, sunglasses, and a mask. I didn't want to get all hot and stuffy, but Oishi's warning was probably right on the money. Considering that, I put them on with appreciation. I looked so suspicious that Oishi had to smile wryly.
どこまで話しましたかね。
御三家という旧家が村を支配しているというところまでです。
The Onigafuchi Defense Alliance was the same as the village of Hinamizawa itself, meaning that there was a direct correlation between being an executive in the alliance and being a leader in the village, and Hyundai had told me a short time ago, if the village was ruled by three ancient families, then it would mean the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance was ruled by those same three families.
県警の資料には何て書いてありました？死守同盟のリーダー格とかそういうことについて。
The documents I was using were classified. If I responded to Oishi's questions, it'd be a breach of security. However, most likely, this man I judged more well-versed in the situation than any of the documents of the prefectural police department, so I decided to answer him.
同盟の会長は現村長の君吉喜一郎と。
Oishi, upon hearing that, let out a small chuckle. For him to ask like that and to laugh at the answer as if it was recorded in the documents meant that wasn't the case in reality.
君吉氏以外の影の人物がいるという県警の持ついや一般的な情報とは異なり。
君吉のじいさんなんてただのお飾りですよ。そもそもこの村じゃ村長なんてポスト自体も形式だけなんです。
つまり同盟も村も本当の意味で支配している別の存在がいるという、それが先ほどおっしゃられていた御三家という存在ですか？
まあそのあたりは これからご説明します。
All of a sudden, with a thunk, the car suddenly lurched. The paved road had given way to a gravel one. At the same time, the scenery outside the window changed. The Hinamizawa Dam project must be withdrawn. Overthrow the shameless puppet of a governor. The dam will submerge the natural beauty of Hinamizawa. Protect the village from the unethical dam. Fear the wrath of Oyashiro-sama's curse. Demolish the dam. Those involved must go away. The construction office must respond. The construction office manager must negotiate with us. Signs and banners crowded the roadside. Even reading the brush-scrawled words was daunting. It was as though there was a road just changed. It was as though where the road just changed was a border with a different country. At that moment, I was startled by the car suddenly braking. Looking ahead, a barricade had been erected. About 5 or 6 protesters wearing masks or helmets to hide their faces were blocking the road, yelling at us angrily to stop. Oh, do we get to play the shoot rubber bullets at innocent protesters minigame? Is that what we're going to get to do now?
これは何ですか? 検問?
Yeah, they dropped... It was a sign that dropped the hard O word. We're in trouble.
はあ? 懲りない連中だな.
Oishi snorted as he rolled down the window and leaned out.
おいおいおい。あんたらダメだよ、こんなとこで道を塞いじゃ。
As Oishi glared at them with a malicious laugh, they visibly faltered.
道開けてくださいな。それじゃ通れないでしょ。
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, it just feels a little weird, kind of approaching protesters. How's it going, nerd? Welcome. Hope things are going well for you this evening. Who would have thought it was Oishi's car? That panic thought seemed to make them lose their presence of mind.
大石刑事の車と分かってればこんなご無礼はしなかったんですがね。大石刑事、いつもの車はどうされました？車検ですか？
そんなところです。台車ってのはどうにも馴染みませんね。
Goes good? Good, good, good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, we're not having a 6-hour power outage tonight, thankfully. So we're actually making good progress. Judging from the brief conversation, I could guess that they were familiar with the license plate of the car Oishi normally used. Oh, Sumihori Bosch. That story's so good. It's got so many good parts, though. It's hard to even guess, like, what the good part could be. But I'm pretty sure it's very good, because Sumihori Boshi is a fantastic arc. In other words, if they knew the car belonged to the police, they would have hidden the barricade. What they were doing was obviously obstruction of traffic, a blatant crime.
そっちの怪しい男は誰です？あんた、顔を見せてくれませんか？
The man glared at me menacingly, wearing a mask and sunglasses made me look particularly dubious. Would not showing my face get me into some unnecessary trouble? I turned to Oishi to see what I should do.
彼の顔は勘弁してあげてください。まだまだ新米でシャイなんですからね。
不審な輩じゃないか確認しよう。
Yeah, I can see how some accidentally prescient things about High School of the Dead might be like, oh, that's weirdly relevant today.
最近のひなみさんは物騒ですからね。
あんたのうち鏡歪んでるのと違います。あんたのその面の方がよっぽど不審ですよ。
The man and Oishi continued to talk like that, feigning smiles at one another. However, from the beginning to the end, I couldn't get over the feeling that I was sitting on a powder keg.
ゴミの不法投棄車両まだ減らないんですか？オタクたちも本当に朝晩大変ですね。
警察の方にもご理解とご協力をいただけて助かりますよ。
During that conversation, the barricade was moved, leaving a gap wide enough for a single car to get through. Oishi lightly honked the horn once and began to roll the car forward. I could see the men's antagonistic glares at the back of the car and the rearview mirror.
何ですかさっきのは。勝手に行動を封殺するなんて。
もちろん犯罪ですよ。目くじら立てても始まりませんがね。連中の主張じゃですね、村内に不法投棄をするトラックが出没するっていうんです。それを封じ込めるために不審車両を検問してるって話だそうで。
不法投棄
Illegal dumping? Only take legal dumps, everybody. Listen. If you take anything away from any of my streams, it's that you should know that my platform has a very strong pro-legal dumping advocacy. So be sure that when you are dumping, that it is legal. I want everybody out there taking nice, clean, legal dumps. Are we clear? Are we clear on that?
参拝を勝手に捨てようとする悪徳業者のことですか？
警察が何の手も打たないから自分たちで自衛するっていう論法でしたね。まあ参拝なんて話はどうせ自演だからどうでもいいんですがね。
自演？
連中うまい作戦なんですよ。
Illicit dumps forever. It sounds like an arc in an anime. Sounds like that would like illicit dumps forever would be like the last arc of some of some Gundam arc or something. That's what it sounds like to me.
ダム現場にですね、工事妨害のために参拝ゴミを自分たちでばらまいてるんです。で、それを悪徳業者のせいってことにして臨検を設置すると、それで工事車両をいちいち足止めしてチクチクと妨害してるってわけなんです。
鬼ヶ淵死守同盟の抵抗運動の一つというわけですね。
多分今の検問でこの車のナンバーが割れましたからね。もうこの先には一切検問の真似事はないと思います。連中も私を怒らせると渡航しないことだけはよーく骨身に染みているようですからね。この車が工事関係車両だと知れるとですね、散々検問で足止めを食らうばかりか、投石や鉄釘のばらまきなんかも食らうって噂です。あなたも身元が割れないようにせいぜい気をつけた方がいいですよ。公安なんてバレたらどんな目に遭うやら。
I wish he was acting like we were talking about something fun, but for me it was no laughing matter.
どこぞの内戦の国に迷い込んだような錯覚です。
あんた、そりゃうまい言い方です。今言われたのはまさにその通り。
I wish he turned to me with a grin and a menacing laugh.
ここはね、戦争地帯なんですよ。
The car slowed down a bit as it went down a narrow road through some farmland.
あそこの森の中に家があるのが見えます？古い感じの。
Looking at where Oishi was pointing, there certainly was an old, traditionally
あ
designed
れが
house.
村長の君吉のじいさんの家です。君吉本家とも言いますな。分家筋が多いですから御三家の一つにあたります。
御三家、Hinamizawa村を支配している旧家ですね。
そうそう。でもう一つが古出家。こっちは分家どころかもう神主一家しか残ってませんがね。ちょうどあっちの方にね、神社がありまして、そこの神主をしています。ちなみにね、死守同盟の事務所はその神社の敷地内にあります。
The office of the Onagafuchi Defense Alliance. If these guys were the enemy, that would make the shrine their
そこを見るこ
stronghold.
とはできますか？
神社は古出家の私有地でね、警察といえど令状がないと踏み込めません。電柱のバックには村の息のかかった議員もいますからね。警察にも強いところと弱いところがあるってことです。御三家とは言ってもですね、 そりゃだいぶ大昔のことなんだそうです。大昔はその御三家ってのは合議して村のいろいろなことを決めてたらしいですな。
ということは今は違うということですね。
あんたいちいち察しがいいですね。さすが高学歴。
The car braked to a halt with a squeal. Ahead of where we were stopped were several signs. Private property beyond, no trespassing. Beware of poisonous snakes. Danger, turn back. Intruders will be charged an entry fee of 1 million yen. Signs were erected where things like that were written all over them. The road was separated from the forest by a chain link fence wrapped with barbed wire.
私有地なんでここまでです。この先は監視カメラがいくつも仕掛けられてます。うっかり道に迷いましたなんて論法が通じる相手じゃありませんからね。
この先がそうなんですね。
The people currently controlling Hinamizawa and the Onifufuchi Defense Alliance were neither the Kimiyoshi family nor the Furude family, but the last of the three.
この先にあるのが御三家の一つ、園崎家。Hinamizawa村を影から支配する連中です。
Among the list of executives recorded in the documents, the number of people whose last names from the three families was quite high. Of course, Sonozaki was no exception. However, at the top was the Kimiyoshi family. If the Kimiyoshi family seemed to be in charge, the rulers behind the scenes were the Sonozaki family. This double-layered structure implicitly told me that this village had both a light and a dark side.
園崎家の頂点は現当主の園崎お涼っていうばあさんです。園崎天皇なんて呼ばれるくらいにその発言には影響力があるそうです。気をつけてくださいよ。大物です。市長だって最敬礼でお迎えするような VIP ですからね。まあHinamizawaと周辺の町に住む村の親族の数千の評伝を固めてるわけですから、政治家は頭上がらないんでしょうが。
つまりその人物が鬼ヶ淵死守同盟の事実上のトップということですね。
そうなります。
With those words, Oishi pulled out a well-worn cigarette box. The suspected kidnapping of the minister's grandchild and the subsequent threats were these part of the hidden plot by the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance in order to get the Hinamizawa Dam project cancelled?
あなた東京からはるばる調べにいらしたんですよね。
ええ、そうですか。何か。
じゃあほらあれだ、犬飼大臣への直訴事件の絡みですかな。
Oh, this guy's got some knowledge.
要するにあれで要注意団体ってことで公安がマークすることになったと、そういう感じですか。
大石さんこそお察しが早くて助かります。
While exhaling out cigarette smoke, Oishi smiled broadly, just like I had pulled a good one on him, or so I thought. His smile disappeared suddenly.
嘘でしょ。だから直訴事件でマークがついたっての嘘でしょ。
Oishi knew there was no way that Tokyo HQ would dispatch an investigator over something as minor as a direct appeal. If they were to dispatch someone, it had to be for a far more dire reason. He had figured out as much. I thought of myself as the type of person who doesn't let things show on their face. In front of his watchful gaze, however, I felt like what I was thinking was completely laid bare. Oishi silently lit another cigarette, as if waiting for me to interject during his awkward pause. I see. So this was a veteran's detective's way of getting someone to spill information. But as long as I realized this, there would be nothing more. If I didn't open my mouth, I wouldn't have to lose anything. Woo! All I had to do was stare out the window and enjoy the scenery until Oishi gave up.
あなたって人は本当に隠し事が下手な人ですね。そういう素直で初々しいの悪くないな。
Oishi smirked as he twisted out his third cigarette, While I tried not to let him notice that I had yielded completely. At first I thought I'd won, but at the very least, Oishi had ascertained that I was hiding something, meaning that I might have ended up marching to his tune. He's really good at getting people to do that. Oishi started up the engine once again and began to move the car.
素直なところを教えてくれりゃ、もっとお力になれると思ったんですがね。
素直に話したらどう力になれるんです？
If the cat was out of the bag, I might as well use it to catch some mice.
内容によりけりですがね。南沢界隈に詳しい情報屋に引き合わせてあげてもいいですよ。
協力員です。
そっか。あんたらはそう呼ぶんでしたね。
どうして私の任務に興味を？大石さん。
そりゃあんたと同じです。常に知るのが私たちの仕事じゃありませんか。
Being able to meet with Oishi's informant was an extremely compelling opportunity. We were looking to recruit somebody familiar with the area and area to collaborate with for intelligence. In the end, there was no better method for finding people than asking. We were always taught, however, that the rank-and-file police were no better than monkeys. Unlike us, they were careless with confidential cases. We looked down on them like they'd run their mouth off in a drunken stupor. Oishi was an outlaw even among them, and here I was lost on whether or not I should tell him about the kidnapping of the minister's grandson.
その情報協力員はどの程度鬼ヶ淵自主同盟に精通を？
あんたも公安の人間ならわかるでしょう。そんなの私の口からたとえあなたにだって話せるわけないじゃありませんか。
Protect your sources. It was the first principle of dealing with confidential information. In that regard, it seemed that Oishi wasn't one of those monkeys. Should I trust him, ask for his help, or not?
あなたは国、私は金に雇われてますがね。私たちの職務はそう大きくは違わないと思っています。力になれると思うんですがね。
However, I had trouble believing that this crafty old man could simply help me just like he claimed. Now, how should I go about this?
大石さんほどの方が無償で力になってくださるとはちょっと思い難いですが。
Oh, we got smooth, sexy cop music back.
Yeah. Groovy.
そりゃ下心がないわけじゃないです。あんたらは確か協力員に支払える謝礼用の予算を持ってますよね。領収書不要な予算を。そいつでですね、情報屋との接触にかかるコストを。
Look at this guy go!
つまり情報屋と渡りをつける謝礼をあなたにお支払いしろということですね。取引内容が明快で助かります。
He certainly was something else for being able to brazenly state his ulterior motive like this. Rather than him doing this out of the kindness of his heart, everything was a lot clearer if he was being compensated for his deal. I felt that he was the type of man who was good at these backroom deals.
誤解しないでくださいよ。お金が必要なのは私にじゃなくて情報屋になんですからね。まあ支払いの関係上お金は私が預かりますよね。
支払いはいつ？
今すぐがいいですね。ないなら明日でもいいんですよ。
I pulled out a wallet that was different from my normal one. The price was pretty much fixed depending on what kind of information I was paying for. In this case, the payment was up front, also considering the fact that I didn't know what kind of info I would get, I shouldn't pay too much. When I suggested that, Oishi suddenly stretched out his hand and tightly grasped the contents of the wallet.
こういう時はですね、ケチケチしない方がいいんです。大丈夫、大丈夫。損はさせませんから。
わかりました。ケチケチしないことにします。
で、調べたい情報は何です？ 内容によって多少アプローチが変わることもありますので。
Thank you, dolls, for the host. How things continue with Super Mario RPG over there. How'd it go? How'd it go? Where you at? Where you at? When I left, it looked like you were heading into the volcano right when I was about ready to start up. Where you at? Where you at, dolls? How'd it go? Isometric platforming sucks. I just got used to it in that game for some reason. It didn't really bother me. Like, I think games like Solstice or Equinox, so much worse. Oh, dang, you just beat the Bowser challenges? Nice, nice. You should be able to finish that next stream pretty handily, I think. Awesome, glad to hear it. Are you enjoying the sexy cop music that we're hearing right now with the Casio saxophone? It's very sexy. Oh, you're so oh, dude. Hey, I know about depth perception, dolls. Believe me, I've got one eyeball. I'm with you. I know how bad depth perception works because I got none. So I'm with you, dude. Is it a weeb game? I don't know. Is it? It's a visual novel. That's kind of what I classify it as. I'm not even like, what the fuck does weeb even mean anymore? It's like it's a pretty worthless word in the grand scheme of things because we literally just say that to mean Japanese anymore. So if you mean, is this a Japanese video game? Yep, definitely created in Japan. Wow, that's cool and not weirdly xenophobic at all. Who am I to judge? What?
他言無用を誓ってもらえますか、大石さん。
誓うまでもありませんよ。私もあなたたちと同じ。職務上知り得たことは他言できませんからね。
You're bad at bouncy puzzles. Oh, you mean like the one where you've got to like kick the ball and make it like so that you only get one left? I don't know. I'm one of those weird people where when we get into the whole weeb Japanese thing, I think it just starts sounding really stupid when we call everything from Japan anime or everything from Japan weeb. I just think it's really stupid sounding. So that's just my take on it. I hear it enough online. I think it just starts blurring together and sounding really dumb and lazy for people who don't want to actually engage with content and want to just be a meme lord about it. And I think being meme lords is kind of dumb these days. That's just me. Your name is Polly. It is. That is my name.
わかりましたよ。誓います。ここで聞くことは他言無用です。
This is Higurashi When They Cry. It is a murder mystery slash happy time game. Like there's not a lot of happiness right now. This is a sort of a flashback chapter. You've entered on a very strange chapter because this chapter takes place before the actual games begin. So you can cry here if you want, by all means. Yeah, this is the happiest we've been in a while. The last arc was about very sad child abuse, and I don't care how entertaining you are, you can't make that fun and happy. You can't make that a fun stream.
それに、あなたのおかげで溜まってたツケを全部返され
Yeah,
る
it was the worst. It was the worst.
私は少なくとも金の絡んだ約束は絶対に違いませんよ。
Oishi will not break a promise that involves money. I was still unsure if I should trust him until the very last moment, but in the end I broke down. Oishi wasn't the type of guy I could trust 100%, but there was no mistaking that he had access to underground information networks. In order to accomplish my mission swiftly, I needed his cooperation. I set my result.
鬼ヶ淵死守同盟がある事件に関与しているか否かを調査しています。
I think the last arc so far is the one that's gotten me the most. The first arc, the end of that first arc really hits hard. The end of the second arc hits really hard. But like the last arc in particular hit really hard a lot of times. But that also comes from having personal experiences with having grown up with friends that went through some pretty rancid child abuse. So, you know, and having understood the situation, you know, kind of at least having that land for you in a way that's a little uncomfortable.
ある事件？
犬飼建設大臣が何者かに脅迫を受けている可能性があります。
可能性とはまた遠回しな言い方ですね。
Alright, dolls, you have yourself a very good evening. Thanks for stopping by and thanks for the host again. Enjoy your dinner. Enjoy your fam time. Hope it's great.
大臣の近辺に内通者がいるらしいのです。
Onikakushi is hard because you feel everything slipping away and you can't do anything about it, and it's just a roller coaster where you're just continuing to plummet.
その内通者によって高度に監視されているらしく、大臣は脅迫初期から屈服している様子です。
At least with the two arcs that follow, you can sort of feel like the main character trying to steer it a little more. Whereas like with the first arc, he's just kind of given in entirely.
警察へも我々へ
and
も
is pushing everybody
一
away,
切通
and
報
it's
していません。
really hard.
なるほど。だから脅迫を受けている可能性という言い方になると。だとすると妙ですね。大臣が誰にも通報しないなら、どうしてあんたらは事件を知ったんです？
If we didn't spy on the minister's private life, we would never have
そ
found
の
out.
説明は私が情報屋に提供する必要がないと思われるので割愛します。
Oishi had apparently caught on and quietly chuckled when I refused to explain.
なるほど。大臣の近辺にスパイがいるらしいから、公安だけの極秘調査ということになったわけですか。そりゃあ確かに穏便な話じゃないですね。
ことを公にすれば大臣の政治生命も含め政変に発展する可能性は極めて高いでしょう。犯人グループの目的がそこにあるならば有識事態に発展する可能性があります。
政府の列島改造はまあいろいろ方々との衝突も多いらしいですからね。どんなささやかなケチでも一つつけば野党勢力がどっと票を伸ばす可能性もあると。
大臣がどのような要求を受けているのかは現在調査中です。ですが脅迫の方法だけはほぼ分かっています。
何です？
大臣の孫の
Well, we're just gonna spill it. All right.
周辺は否定していますが、最後の目撃から見てすでに誘拐後72時間が経過していると思われます。
3日ですか。波の身代金目的ならもう決着してますね。
金銭でなく大臣に何らかの政治的なアクションを要求している可能性が極めて高いでしょう。それを我々は黙認するわけにはいきません。
で、それの犯人グループとの可能性として鬼ヶ淵死守同盟がリストに上がったわけですね。
そうです。
大臣の孫を誘拐してダム計画の撤回を求めるか。
どうでしょう、大石さん。その可能性はあなたから見てあり得ると思いますか？
Oishi seemed to ponder the idea for a while. The section chief at the regional office had responded immediately with, "It's possible." However, Oishi, who was well informed about the matter, was hemming and hawing. Finally, just a little bit, he said something that was really just a bit strange.
明治前まではですね、この辺りはhinamizawa村って名前じゃなくて鬼ヶ淵村って呼ばれてたそうです。うちのばあ様の受け売りですがね。
The topic was so completely and suddenly unrelated to the subject of the kidnapping of the minister's grandson that I was taken slightly aback.
鬼ヶ淵村。それで鬼ヶ淵死守同盟という名称になったわけですね。
鬼ヶ淵村ってのはですね、人食い鬼の住む村だと言われてたんだそうです。今でも村人は自分の体に鬼の血が半分流れてると信じてます。
人食い鬼。大石さん、それ何の話ですか？
情報ですよ。さっきあなたからたくさんもらっちゃいましたからね。少しもらいすぎました。その分サービスしてあげてるんですよ。
How kind of him. How kind of him to give us cursed information. I wish he finally smiled, but it didn't seem like he was fooling around.
先を続けてください。
人食い鬼たちはですね、普段は仙人と崇められてひっそりと暮らしているんですがね。やっぱり人食いですから、定期的に麓の村に降りてきては獲物をさらっていったんだそうです。それをですね、鬼隠しと言いまして。
Demoned away was the first time I heard such a peculiar phrase. However, I felt something slightly ominous from the horrifying tale of demons abducting people in order to eat them.
ほら、よく世間一般に神隠しっていうのがあるじゃないですか。
That's a bad movie. It's very boring. It's 2.5 hours. Uh-oh. There comes some hot takes. Hot takes for you. There you go.
人がある日突然失踪してしまうとそう言うでしょ。この辺りでは同じことがあると鬼隠しって呼ぶんです。
その昔話と本件に何か関係が？
いえいえ、直接的には何の関係もない、ただのおしゃべりですがね。
Castle in the Sky is way better.
ただ、
Ka-thump, ka-thump. The car shook. At some point, the gravel road had changed to a paved one.
ただ、何です？
この土地に鬼隠しという名の失踪、誘拐を暗示するキーワードがあるということだけはお話ししておこうと思いまして。今回の大臣の孫の誘拐と関係あるかは分かりませんがね。まあ深い話ではないんです。そんな言われの話があるということだけでもね。
Onigikushi, human-eating demons coming down from the foothills and abducting their prey. Then, in order to cancel the dam project that threatened to submerge the village they lived in, they demon away the minister's grandson. Then, had they already made an example out of the minister's grandson and eaten him alive?
ちょっと興味深い昔話ですね。
鬼たちの村にみだりに踏み入れば、たちまち囚われ食い殺される。だから鬼ヶ淵村には近づくな。今時の若者はこんな迷信信じませんがね。沖宮の明治生まれの年寄り連中には今でも真面目に信じてるのが多いですよ。
Hinamizawa village was feared by people in the area. I recalled that piece of information I heard from the prefectural police safety division.
何しろこの辺は田舎ですからね。迷信なんかが平気で幅を利かせてるんです。東京から来られた赤坂さんにはちょっと想像もつかないでしょうがね。
The man-eating demons as a price for violating the sanctity of their village kidnapped the minister's grandson and swallowed him whole. That ludicrous idea flew through my head. It was so absurd, I was half disgusted with myself. I wish he was just teasing me. Stupid. It was all really so stupid. Come to think of it, by then, I may have already been seized by the curse of that dubious village. For me to realize that would take a little more time. Oh, what does that mean? What does that mean, chat? What could that possibly mean? For our boy, Akasaka. We got 4 freaking tips! 4 big old tips to get through here. What's all this? We got a phone call with Yukie, a record of opening remarks, Gears and fire at the taste of honey, which that looks like a real good, a real tasty thumbnail there. And the chick in the trunk. These all sound good.
そうですか。急な出張は大変ですね。どうぞお気をつけて。出張はどちらへですか？もう出張先なんですか？
Whenever I headed out on assignment, she would ask where. Not just Yukie, but anybody would have asked the same question. If it was a cold place, she would urge me to pack a thick jacket. If it was far, she'd warn me to be careful on the drive over. If it was just normal everyday concern that led to asking such an obvious thing. I felt sad that I couldn't answer such a run-of-the-mill
ごめんな
question.
さい。言ってはいけない規則でしたね。どうかお気をつけて。
すまん、ユキエ。
あなたはいつの頃からすぐに謝られるようになったんでしょう。今のお仕事に疲れた最初はあれだけはつらつと充実していらっしゃったのに。
Yukie laughed as though she had realized something. Times like this, Yukie had a magical power to see right through me.
私が入院してもう随分になりますものね。あなたもそろそろ寂しくなってきましたか？
からかうなよ。寂しがるような年じゃないさ。
さてさていかがでしょう。あなたは本当に甘えん坊なんですからね。私と一緒でないとだんだん弱気になってきてしまうのでしょう。
Oh no. Oh no, she does kind of have a Takano sort of vibe to her voice, doesn't she? I'm playing a visual novel right now that has a phone trigger. It has a phone trigger, and I keep accidentally like hitting it every now and then to see if I got an email. So I know what you're talking about.
君は昔から。
はぐらかさないはぐらかさない。私に構ってもらえなくて寂しい寂しいって。あなたが尻尾を振っている音が受話器を通しても聞こえてきますよ。
I'm kind of like, I wonder if this is actually Takano's voice actress now pulling double duty. I kind of get that vibe now. The sight of Yukie wasn't something you could guess existed from seeing her usual modest behavior, and it was something that she didn't show to anybody else but me. Yeah, it needs more ara ara. Normally I'd poke her to hide my embarrassment, to bring an end to the conversation, but I couldn't do that over the phone. Of course, Yukie was clever. She was teasing me because of that.
あなたを困らせるのがこんなに楽しいと気づいたのはいつからだったでしょうね。
そろそろ許してくれよ。
そうでしょ？元気になれましたか？
I had called Yukie to keep her from feeling lonely when she was by herself in the hospital room. Of course, that was nothing more than a pretense that I, being shy, had come up with. It seemed that Yukie had long since seen through that act.
また電話をしてくださいな。私がダメな時はお父さんが相手をしてくれるでしょう。もっともお父さんが相手ではあなたのことだから電話先でも直立不動で喋っていそう。
For a while longer, Yukie kept teasing me without letting me end the call. Well, that was nice. That was nice. A record of opening remarks. Chairman XX, members of the XX Party, congratulations are due as we are celebrating 25 years since our founding. The past 25 years have seen much growth in XX Prefecture. The once quiet scenery of nothing but fields has now seen the opening of a new stop for the bullet train. And with the development of the highway, we've seen such a rebirth of a modern city bursting with youthful energy. We've reaped the benefits of new business and industry. And with the special reverence that the residents of XX Prefecture have for time-honored traditions, history and culture, business and industry, with these ideals in harmony, they have accomplished in growing their city into one of Japan's foremost metropolises. Of course, the development of XX Prefecture couldn't have happened without the growth of the XX Party. We are resolved to see every one of our campaign promises to fruition, reaching our targets definitively and expediently, like arrows fired from a bow. With these arrows as the fundamental basis of the XX Party, our members have sought to pierce the obstructions preventing the happiness of the residents of the XX Prefecture. But I do believe that everybody here is unlike an ordinary arrow. While being as unfaltering and straightforward, we have not relegated in seeking solutions that conform to the current day and age while also keeping an eye on the future. An arrow, once loosened, can only fly to its destination. Everyone here, however, is no simple arrow. Each one loosened from the bow without neglecting our studies while employing new methods and implementing more effective and flexible ideas, thus being able to change trajectories mid-flight. We are magical arrows! The modern day marches ever forward. Sometimes it marches faster than the time taken from planning to execution. The following part was not in the script. It is thought to have been ad-libbed by the minister. For example, there have recently been numerous problems with the Hinamizawa power plant project. Rather than forcing through the project solely because it was decided upon by the government, it is necessary to reflect on and adjust to the ever-changing needs of the residents, the region, and the next generation. The protests by the local residents that surround Hinamizawa Dam. These are also the will of the people of the XX Prefecture. If you feel that there is no need to listen because the project has already been finalized, then you do nothing more than shed a poor light on Japan's post-war democracy. The following is as per the script. For the lasting happiness of the citizens of Japan and the residents of the XX Prefecture, please consider these policies thoroughly. I believe, however, we have all gained something from the flexibility and foresight of the XX Party. I have taken up much of your time. However, allow me to say the following to celebrate the 25th anniversary of our founding. Chairman XX, members of the party in attendance, thank you very much for today. From the opening remarks of the XX Party Prefectural Forum and the 25th anniversary celebration. And here's a good looking one. Gears and fire and the taste of honey. That's some gnarly looking honey there, but I'm sure it tastes just as great, right? It's probably fine. The world is filled with people blessed with relationships. Of course, that doesn't mean that everyone is connected to each other. It is obvious that on the other side of the planet, there are people laughing and crying who can't possibly have an effect on you. However, in the extremely limited community of the neighborhood, that sort of connection is just a matter of fact. It is quite possible that a single remarkable event could have massive consequences inside a small community. If you were to increase that scale, a perfect stranger on the other side of the globe might become enough of a legend to have an effect on our lives. Seems like the honey you've got in your house? Well, it's not always that way. Like I said in the beginning, the links between people basically aren't that relevant in the grand scheme of things. Whether some household nearby is having steak or croquettes doesn't matter to me. When I put on my shoes, it doesn't matter to anybody whether I put the right one on first or the left. This much the average person can understand, but actually, in reality, this is the truth. The bonds between people are quite well defined. It's not just a matter of distance, of being far or near. For example, let's say that person A's actions have some effect on me. Even then, person B's actions could have absolutely no consequence on my life. The reverse also holds true. Because of my actions affect person A, that doesn't always mean that they affect person B as well. Let's put it bluntly. If the bonds between people are like gears in a machine, the gear that represents me meshes with some people, but is isolated from others. There are some who would try arguing against this. These people would bring up the example of gears in a clock. Each gear indeed only directly meshes with one or two others. However, if you rotate one gear, the one next to it is moved, which connects to the next one, to the next, and in the end, all the gears are moving. There is logic behind this, more than enough to convince the average person. Why is the argument convincing? The answer is simple. The relationships between people are ambiguous and can only be described conceptually. How the gears are connected and how their movement are chained together can't be used as a fundamental explanation, so it throws a wet blanket on that argument. So for the people who like that explanation, I'll use the example of a clock again to refute it. First of all, to say that this world is a singular clock would be wrong. That is, there isn't only one clock. There exist many clocks in this world, each counting their own time. If you think about it, the idea that this world is just one big clock is the height of arrogance. Even if you use the analogy of gears to explain human relationships, then you should be able to explain it using an analogy of multiple clocks unrelated to a single gear. Neighbors A and B. A is a gear the same clock as me, so it is best to remain civil. B is a gear in a different clock, so he doesn't really matter to me at all. That's the kind of clear distinction I'm talking about. You want to say I'm being fallacious? Then let's change the analogy to something more familiar so you can understand, you idiot. You've probably heard the phrase, a fire in the opposite shore, sometime in your life, no? For example, if your neighbor's house is on fire, you'd probably try to help to put it out, wouldn't you? It'd be awful if the fire spread and burned down your house too, after all. But what if the fire was in a town on the opposite side of a river? Would you still go out of your way to help? You wouldn't, would you? Even though it would be the wrong thing to do, there's no way the fire could spread to your own house. Always has been. Even if it turned into a huge conflagration, there's no relation between the houses that will spread fire to yours and those that won't. With this basic example, you could be able to see the difference between your gears, between gears that are related and aren't related to your own. Having said that, there's still a lot to think about, even without a river to divide it. After all, it's not a spatial problem like being on the other side of the river, is it? That's some food for thought. Also, I'll point out, if anybody in chat is getting ready to stream, now is a good time to go ahead and hit your live button, because after we read this tip, I'm going to kind of just outro and then toss out a host. So if you're going to go live or something, drop it in chat and let me know you're going live. That way I can give you a host on the way out. That way I don't have to look for one. You won't make it in time. Gotcha. Okay. And our final tip. The chick in the trunk. It's probably just, you know what? Stop by Kentucky Fried Chicken on the way home. Put the bucket in the trunk because you don't want the car smelling like some chicken, right? I think that's it. You're off to sleep afterwards? All right, I got you. We'll just find somebody else to host then. It's no big deal if nobody else is going live. But we got until this tip is over for someone to say they're going live. We'll get it fixed. The card stopped, but he didn't know any more than that. For not only was he blindfolded, but locked in the trunk of the car. You do want your trunk smelling like chicken. Think about that. How awesome would that be? You open up your trunk every day, get something out of there, it smells like chicken. That's awesome. You don't want your car smelling like chicken all the time. I know somebody that did a lot of landscaping near Kentucky Fried Chicken. So they eventually got sick of the smell. Like they couldn't be around Kentucky Fried Chicken at all because it would make them gag. But if you only had to deal with that maybe once a day, getting in your trunk, now that's some good trunk chicken. Boom. It'd be fantastic. You'd love it. For not only was he blindfolded, but locked in the trunk of the car. How could people become this powerless just by being robbed of their sight? He absolutely wouldn't have known this without experiencing it firsthand. He soon realized that it was pointless to try and undo his bonds, with the confines of the trunk quickly making him lightheaded. He had no choice but to let this mild torture dull his senses. That's why, when the car stopped and the unpleasant vibrations ceased as the engine was killed, he couldn't help but delude himself that he was being set free, even though that nothing had been resolved in reality. Yeah, KFC chicken's sort of not that great, but I think it's got a really good smell to it. I think like the only reason to go to KFC is like maybe for their gravy, but I can sort of make that on my own now. So, it's kind of no big deal. I don't really go there anymore. I won't turn it down, though. Like, if somebody's got KFC and, like, they're having me over or something, I'm not going to say, I don't want it. I still think it's okay. It's still chicken. You've never actually eaten KFC in your life. The best part of KFC chicken is literally the skin. Like, I don't think that the chicken itself actually tastes all that, like, different from what you would get normally frying some chicken in oil. But the skin is, like, kind of, I think, the main highlight there. Of course, he was soon removed from that delusion. He strained his ears when he heard one of the men who had abducted him and an older man he was hearing for the first time strike up a
お疲れさん
conversation.
です。ヒナはトランクに。騒ぎすぎで多少衰弱してるようですが、ご命令通り、
Yeah, you're not
傷
wrong.
一つつけちゃいません。
おう、手間かけましたの。
The trunk opened, letting in a blast of fresh, cool air. Even though up until now he had been thinking about getting out of that stuffy trunk, when it was actually opened, he suddenly became uneasy. Even though he wished that the lid of the trunk would once again close, separating himself from them, suddenly somebody stroked his head. Of course, since he was blindfolded, he couldn't tell if the hand was petting him or simply evaluating how easy it would be to remove his scalp. Unable to tell the difference, he could only freeze as he imagined the worst-case scenario.
ああ、いそうにの。震えとんね。おとなしくしばらく過ごすがよかろう。
The older man said that kindly as he gently stroked the boy's
本
head.
に辛い思いしちゃろな。
It must be real tough being. It must be real
おめえの
tough
おじい
being
ちゃんは優
kidnapped.
しい人だんね。すぐに助けてくれるだろうの。
Having heard nothing but the average standard dialect his whole life, the older man's distinct intonation left a deep impression on the boy. But he had no idea what he was saying. For your gramps to register as meaning your grandfather took a while to process. Eventually, the hand that was stroking his head loosened the
目
blindfold.
隠しはまずいっすよ。面が割れると後々まずいです。
ああ、そうかの。なんら、せめて猿靴はくらい外したらんな。これぎゃ、息もできんね。
叫ばれたらまずいです。こいつのことは俺たちに任せてください。
たく、気の利かんやっちゃらな。本家にむごい仕打ちはせんやっちゃっとる。そこんとこ、肝に刻むんよ。
分かってます。手荒な真似はしませんよ。小僧がおとなしくしててくれる分にはね。
The man's hand prodded roughly and repeatedly at the boy's head. A rugged hand, unlike the affectionate one that had been stroking his head before. Just stay cooperative. If you struggle, there's no guarantee what will happen. That cliched threat was literally beaten into his head. All right, so we know we've got a confirmed kidnapping. They mentioned the families, so this is very likely the kind of inside job that Oishi and Akasaka were talking about. So that's definitely got some things going on now. Like, it sounds like there's definitely some dirt happening in and or around the world of Hinamizawa. So we will find out tomorrow, hopefully, if the weather holds out and all that good stuff, and if the internet doesn't decide to be a big old poop face.